To be here, I travel quite a bit, so often when we get the opportunity to have these boot camps, I don't get the chance to be here. So it's nice to actually be in town and get to join you. We're trying a new format this time. We're doing a panel discussion, so we hope you enjoy it and would encourage you to provide feedback. What worked, what didn't work. We constantly try to do things a little bit better. But whenever I get a crowd, I like to share a little bit about credit unions, because often people don't understand what credit unions really are, or you think we're a bank. And we are a bank-like organization, but we're actually a cooperative. So if you think, I grew up in rural Wisconsin, so when I think cooperative, I think farm co-ops, where you go and buy your seed and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's the same format. But today's world, co-ops have evolved. So Everman's downtown is a cooperative. If you ever shopped at REI is a cooperative. And every credit union in the country is a cooperative. And all that means is we are owned by anybody who uses our services. If you're a member of the credit union, you are an owner of the credit union. So different from a bank structure where banks are owned by stockholders. So our focus, our energy is always spent on making sure we take care of our members through rates, through trying to do a better job on rates, do a better job on fees. A big focus at Panelists is giving back to the community. We call it community within our organization, community and generosity. So we use our time and our money to do things in the community. This is one of the outreach programs we have. We've partnered with the university for more than 5 years, but with the business school for the last 5 years. And we just want to come out and educate. We realized that when I went to school and I left, I had to kind of learn, what's this real world thing? How do I pay my bills? And rent, and wait, it's not just rent, it's insurance to go along with it, my car payment and my car insurance and all these things. And often you're so busy with learning, in my case accounting, that sometimes you don't get the basics of how do I live my life when I get out of school. And so that's what we're trying to do, is provide feedback and information. So our industry's been around since in the United States, the late 1800s, but the National Credit Union Act was actually put in place in 1934, and our credit union started in 1936. So we were one of the first that were formed under the new National Credit Union Act that the government passed. So started out at NES Pensacola, civil service employees, but now we serve pretty much the entire community. We're still considered a closed charter credit union, which means you have to work for a particular employer. You can join an association that we have. We're not open to the general public, but if you're part of this area, we can find a way to help you join our credit union. And like I said, our focus is trying to give back and give back to our members and give back to our community. So today is one of our ways to do that. Hope you enjoy it, and we encourage lots of questions and feedback. We've got a great panel of folks that'll be here to answer a number of questions. We actually have at least one recovered banker here on the panel. We like to kid about that because bankers and credit unions don't always get along. We actually get along pretty well, but one of the unique aspects of credit unions is we don't pay income taxes because we're a cooperative. We're owned by our members, and banks obviously have to pay income taxes. So they don't like that aspect about us, but we do get one once in a while, and they go through kind of a rehab program, and then they come out on the other side.
I like it now.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks for coming. We appreciate you joining. And we would encourage you to share with others. Hopefully you get a lot out of this program, and encourage others to come in the future. So I'll turn it back over.
Panera is a great supporter of the university. We really appreciate your support from the College of Business. Fantastic partners, and I was just introduced to one of our interns from our finance program. You're helping us in that way also. It's fantastic. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to introduce the chair of this panel, or the host of the panel, and then I'll let you do what you're going to do with your panel. But a lot of you recognize this is our own Professor Kevin Krieger, who's an associate professor of finance in the College of Business here, and so is teaching a lot of the formal courses about financial management and about investing, about portfolio management, and so many of you also may know that I don't know if you teach the students about gambling, or you just research about gambling. And if you haven't heard about that, ask him about his research research later on. And it will prepare you maybe for the next football season.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do any baseball stuff.
It's quiet until fall. Then.
Yeah, okay, all right. So you can get ahead of it. He's also the faculty advisor for our Argo investment fund. I don't know if you folks are familiar with this, but our students actually get to manage part of our foundation fund. So they're making real decisions about real investments that hopefully produce real payoff for the university. And if you're not involved with that,
Speak to me.
yeah, we welcome all folks to be involved. So Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dean O'Keefe. Yes, this is all true, and yes, we'll be taking a break on the wagering front until September. That's mostly about behavior than it is actual money making. That's the kind of bring together there's financial behavior, decision making, how people make kind of odd decisions based on psychological factors. Let's talk about something way more responsible today, and that's being tied to a credit union. I think I was asked to moderate or lead this lovely panel because I have been a Penn Air member for over 30 years, and this was started by my parents at a little tight age, because I'm certainly not old enough to do. But to say, I've heard tell that maybe if I make 35 years, I'd be one of the lifetime gold kind of members sort of things. And so that's my goal is to make my 35 here in just a few. I'm pleased to be joined today from my immediate left with John Heckmann, who is the Finance Investments Manager with Penn Air. And then next, Lori Cukjati, who is the Credit Resolution Litigation Supervisor from Penn Air. And with David Lancaster, the Vice President of Lending from Penn Air. We'll spend most of our time today sort of entertaining whatever interests you the most, although we do have sort of some inkling on prepared topics based on some early kind of feedback with the students. So I'd like to ask each of them in turn to tell us a little bit about what their background is and a little bit about what they do day to day, how they spend the biggest parts of their day in their various sort of areas within the credit union. And so we'll start with John. If you would, please.
Unfortunately, Stu missed it. I am also a reformed banker. Came from the banking world. So I manage our finance and investments area. It's more of a corporate finance, not financing loans. That would be more of David's area. And then as long as you pay on time, you'll never have to speak to Lori in her area. But on a day-to-day basis, I manage a team. We carry out a couple different functions, but and I can't even really tell you. So I do this day to day, but I manage my team. But one of the functions we carry out is managing Penn Air's investment portfolio. It's not like, and I get a lot of people, when I say that, I get a lot of people that would say, oh, hey, give me some good stock picks. I don't know, I'd have to go talk to my advisor for that. We the institution, Penn Air, our goal is we take deposits in and we'd like to loan those out, but there's always a little bit that we don't quite loan out. So like for every $100, if you were to come in and put $100 into the credit union, we would loan out about 70 of that. We keep about $5 on hand in the vaults and whatnot. And so that other $25, Penn Air as an institution invests. We're mainly in bonds. So one of my main responsibilities is to manage that portfolio. There's some other things too, but that's the easiest one that I could explain. And I'll turn it over to Lori. Oh, one thing, a little bit about my background. I'm from Arkansas. Went to school there. Went to work in Memphis for a big investment bank there for about 8 years. Went back to Arkansas and got my MBA and then ended up here.
Thank you, John.
Now you can have it.
All right. Thank you for having us. I just really hope that we can give you some nuggets of information that you can take with you personally and in your career. You do have a unique group. John, like he said, he invests money. David lends money, and I take money. So I'm not the girl you want to see if you default on a loan. My department is all about collecting If you don't make your payments, the other part of my department is charging off loans, and that's not where you want to go. Our whole objective is to mitigate the losses, not only for our members. We want you to be successful and making payments and achieving your goals. But if you don't, we charge them off or we repossess a vehicle. My main focus is on mortgages. I do have to deal with foreclosures, short sales, deed in lieu, all those things related to defaulting in a mortgage. But loss mitigation is really where I like to focus in helping people to retain their home, figure out a way to get it back into a performing loan. I also work with titles on vehicles. When people don't pay and we are forced to repossess a vehicle, it's important to have our lien on a title. Another area that I deal with is litigating. If you don't pay on a loan, then we are forced to file lawsuits. And every financial institution does that. So that's part of what I do. Also, bankruptcy is a part of what I do. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I have a great team that I work with. And we work really hard to help our members be successful and achieve their financial goal. And that's about it. I did come from the finance world, so I'm kind of reformed, credit union person as well. I grew up in the Northeast, and I went to school in the Midwest, and then ended up here. And my background was in psychology, and my husband is a CPA, and how I got started in actual finance and collection was he was given a loan, a debt, a business that wasn't doing well, and asked to make it work. And we had one store. We ended up with 9 stores that we sold, and so we were successful at that. And then we moved to Florida, and here I am.
Yeah, hi, my name is David Lancaster. I've been with Panelists for almost 2 years. I'm actually originally from Mobile, but I moved away years and years ago. I just came from Kansas City. We've lived there for about 16 years, worked for a large bank. Before that, I worked for finance companies in Atlanta. I was in New Jersey. Worked in Birmingham for a while, Montgomery, so I've been all around. So it's nice to come back down to this area, and I think it's completely different than Mobile in a positive way. My job's really, I look at it as almost like you're a police officer, and you're trying to make sure that you're protecting the credit union as a whole from making bad loans to enforcing regulations that the government has put into place. At the end, it's trying to go around all of those things and make it look kind of seamless in your eyes as far as if you're applying for a loan, you don't see all this going on. But the areas I have are the consumer lending, and that consists of like credit cards, car loans, unsecured loans, things like that. We also, if you go to a car dealer around here, we do a lot of what's called indirect lending, where they will actually close the loan at the car dealership, and we're one of the lenders that finances that automobile for you. I've got the mortgage department, and we also do member business lending, so we do some business lending as well, because a lot of our members are also business owners. So as far as kind of the everyday, I would just tell you, again, I'm more in the realms of kind of overseeing the whole department, and that's kind of code for I've got a lot of people that keep me out of trouble, basically. I'm glad to be here, and the good news is my wife starts here next month. She's getting an accelerated Bachelor of Nursing class that she's starting, so I won't see her for another year, but she will.
Thank you all. I think I think I'd like to actually maybe encourage, start in the student lending area. It might be something that's our audience would be particularly interested in. And audience members, I'm going to try to throw sort of an opening pitch or so about this, but especially if you feel as if we're somewhat on point to something that you're curious about, show me a hand, and I think I'll be able to see it pretty well, and I'll maybe ask you to tell us who you are and to state your question, and I'll kind of re-announce it when we get to that. But let's maybe start with that sort of possibility in the area of student lending, and whoever feels most comfortable or wants to take the lead, you're welcome to. Do you have any thoughts about, especially for those that are kind of nearing the time where repayment is coming? Any thoughts about the biggest do or maybe the biggest don't on what they're going to encounter when it's actually time to start the repayment part of their contract?
Well, I think one thing that's really, really important is knowing what kind of student loan you have. Some people get student loans from different financial institutions, and some people get federal student loans. If you get a federal student loan, you need to be really, really careful and really be diligent about making your payments. At 270 days, that federal student loan is in default. So if you don't make a payment for 270 days, you're going to be in default. Also, if you have a federal student loan and you go to file your taxes and you are supposed to get a refund, you will not get your refund. They will take all your money. Another thing, being in this area where we live, if you have a federal student loan and you apply for FEMA, and you've defaulted on your loan or not paying it, you won't get any FEMA assistance. Another thing is if you have a federal loan and you have any kind of government assistance like Social Security, they can also take that. They can also garnish your wages and take any assets that you might have. Also, you cannot file bankruptcy if you have a federal student loan. So it's really, really important to know what kind of loan you have. It's important to try to make that payment a priority. I know that when you get out of school, juggling everything is a difficult task. And like I told my kids, make a spreadsheet of everything you have to pay, make that loan important. I know when I first got married, my husband said, "Oh, you don't have to pay that student loan. Nobody pays those loans." So we went to, our builder was building our home and they pulled my credit. It wasn't all the credit cards that I got from the mall that were the problem. The problem was I didn't pay my student loan, and we almost didn't get our home. So I had to take all the money I saved to furnish our home and pay off my student loan. So it's important.
Yeah, and I would just throw out to you a couple of things. It could be a fixed rate, which means it never changes. It can be a variable rate. So you think the rates are real low right now. As rates keep going up, your payment is going to increase. So you want to allow in your budget not taking that exact payment. You want to give yourself some room, add some estimated costs into the future. As far as from the lending side, most people, that's one of the first types of credit that you start with, is your student loan. When we look at someone who's just started paying on their student loans, I'll see a lot of people that have already been derogatory credit. They've missed the payments. And that's already going to have an impact on your interest rate on a car loan, because you're going to have a vehicle most likely. That's going to increase either what type of car you can buy, because your payment's going to be higher, and that means the total dollar amount you can buy, or you're going to have to finance it for a longer loan term. Then that's also going to affect maybe whether you can get a credit card. Think of all the times, if you have a credit card, or if you have parents who have credit cards, and you see how many times you have to use one, like just to get a rental car. Things as simple as that, where maybe you might be paying cash, but you still got to give them a credit card. It can really limit things that you do in your life. And then even more if you go to rent or buy a home, it's going to affect those as well. So if you don't pay on a student loan, you miss payments, you've just increased how much you're really paying back on student loans, although it's going towards another type of debt.
I know one of the questions that I saw was, should you contact your lender who has your student loan? I really think that that's very important to contact them, let them know where you are financially. They may have a program for you, some kind of forbearance program, some kind of forgiveness program. Even if the forgiveness program isn't a whole forgiveness, it may be a part of the loan. There might be something out there. I know that Florida's Hardest Hit program also had a Florida Hardest Hit program for student loans. I know also that those loans are not, there's no forgiveness for about 20 years on those loans. So it's important that you make them important.
So let me ask a question. First of all, student loan, is that a topic that everyone in here is really concerned about? You don't have to raise hands, but shake heads on. Just to give you some, a little bit of an idea, nationwide, those that do have student loans, I want to say the average, and we talked about this once in one of my previous ones, the average amount of students graduating with debt's around $25,000 in student loan debt. But you know, a couple of things I've run into with student loans, and I guess people have asked me, and topics that seem to be important, you know, how much student loan should I consider? How much student debt is too much? Student loan debt's like anything else. I mean, there's no two people that are in the exact same situation, and so the way it affects their lives and their standard of living, so to speak, is different between two different people. And the best analogy I can use is to think about what you're financing. What's the ultimate collateral there? Well, it's your future earnings. And I know we don't have everybody in here from the same academic background, but even within the business school, so, you know, the business school will offer different degrees, from marketing to accounting to finance to economics. But if you take two people with two different degrees that have the exact same amount of student debt, they're not both weighing on each individual person the same. And where I'm going with that is, no two degrees are guaranteeing you, well, nothing's guaranteeing you, but have the same earning potential. So if I said I graduated college with and this is not true, with $80,000 in student loan debt, well, is that good, bad? What do I have to compare it to? Well, if I tell you I graduated with a degree to do yoga, you know, what's the earning potential for that? If I graduated with $80,000 of debt and I'm a doctor and a medical doctor, you know, the earning potential there is different. So it's kind of like asking me, well, I owe $50,000 on my car. Okay, that's great. Well, what kind of car is it? If you tell me it's a 10-year-old Honda Accord, I'm going to go, oh, man, that burns. If you're going to tell me it's a brand new Ferrari and you only owe $50,000 on it, I'm saying, you know, okay, I get that. So there's no really way to answer, to approach it as, oh, well, how much student debt's too much debt? You know, how much of my degree should I finance? You know, things of that nature. So you just kind of have to look at your own individual situation. The worst thing you can do is finance your first 2 years of school and then drop out and have the same earning potential you had before you even took on any debt. So just, you have to understand what you're taking on the debt for, and you know, what's your potential in the future to be able to pay that back in a reasonable amount of time.
I think you'll find you can find ratios or little back of the envelope type of tips or calculations based on future earnings projections. And you can also get some general, of course you can refine the search and spend an hour doing it instead of 5 minutes, but you can base it on geography and field and level, the projection for the future and that sort of thing. But I think it's well put. It largely depends. It's largely based on you're giving away a piece of your future, planning to give away a piece of your future.
So I want to throw this one quick little sales spiel or plug our credit union. And it doesn't have to be Pen Air, but one thing that is available that I found, because two of my employees have student loans, and we got to talking about some stuff, is that if you work for a not-for-profit or a government entity after school, and you have a government student loan, like Lori was talking about, and this is not one that's through Bank of America or something like that. If it's through the Sally Mae program, through some sort of government program, you can go to work for a nonprofit or for a government entity, and basically the program, what they do is you send them your W-2 at the end of the year, basically showing you the earnings you had for that year. They make your payments based on those year-end earnings. They set your payments for the following year. So you earn more money, you pay more back towards your student debt. After 10 years, whatever is left is forgiven. So that's the closest I've heard in the market to any kind of debt forgiveness on student loans. You can't even file bankruptcy and be forgiven student loans. So, that's one thing to think about, that a lot of not-for-profits and government entities don't pay the absolute highest, sexiest salaries that you're going to find out there, but there's a lot of other hidden benefits that you have access to, this being one of them.
One thing to add, I know that the average age to pay off your student loan is 41. So at that point, you probably have children of your own and putting them through school of some kind. So meeting that debt head on is really important. And another thing that David said was, if you don't pay it, it affects your credit. Your credit is so important, because if you're getting into business or finance, most companies who are going to hire you are going to pull your credit. If you can't manage your credit, why would they hire you to manage theirs? So I think that keeping your credit in mind on a daily basis, we find so many things that are important, and we forget about our credit. We keep all kinds of calculations, what level we're playing on our games, and how many swipes left and right, and how many followers we have. But that number, the FICO score, needs to be really important, and it just takes a couple minutes a week to manage the money you make. It doesn't matter where you work or how much your income is, but manage that money. Because in the end, it's going to be really, really important, because when you're looking for a home one day, that's a 30-year mortgage. You want to have a decent credit score, because that's going to be there for a long time.
I might jump in there. We're talking about credit scores. I think this is pretty important. A lot of people just wonder, what's my credit score? Well, I'll tell you a few things. There's, I believe, almost 26, it could be more, 26 plus FICO score models out there. It depends on the type of loan you apply for. So it's not an apples to apples. When you go get out those free, you go to buy a credit score from somewhere, it might not be the credit score that we're looking at. So I'm just throwing that out so you understand that part. What makes up your FICO score? And that might be an important thing. Most people think you start at 0 and you do real well and you get up to a high score. Actually, everybody starts off at the highest score and it comes down. So that being said, here's the main components of your credit score. Because this gets into saying, how much debt should I have? What kind of debt should I have? Well, 35%, which is the largest, 35% of your FICO score goes towards your payment history. Have you made your payments on time? 30% goes to the amount of debt you have, total debt. So it'll look at your student loans, if you have a house, a car, a credit card, take all of those amounts. 15% goes to how long you've had your credit. So how many years has it been established? So really, the earlier you start building your credit, the smarter you'll be, because you'll start to, get a better credit score. 10% goes to new credit. So are you just going and buying all these things and financing them because now there's a deal going on and I can get 20% off on my clothes up at the mall, so I'm going to open up a Dillard's card or something. And then the next is 10% is your credit mix. What types of loans, what type of debt do you have? Do you have all credit cards? Do you have a mix of that and car loan and mortgage, etc.? So all of those things go in there, but like we were saying, you know, the two top ones are how you paid and how much you owe. And here's another ratio. We talk about what your payment is on your student loan. Depending on what your credit score is, we will only lend out, and all lenders pretty much do this, is we'll only lend out a percentage of your gross income. So the gross income is what you make before you get your real money after Uncle Sam takes all your taxes. So let's just say you make, I like easy math, so say you make $100,000, everybody just got a raise. So you have $100,000 and you're paying out, I don't know, say it's $40,000 a year. So that's 40%. So once you get over 35, that starts creeping up. 35 to 40% is kind of the where you stop. If you go get a mortgage, the most you're probably going to be able to pay, I think it's 43%. So what goes into that ratio? It's, again, you would take debts that are on your credit report. That, again, a car, credit card, student loans. If you don't have a mortgage, it would be your rent payment. Typically, you don't take into consideration, you know, you might say, oh, well, I'm only at 35, 40%. Well, what that doesn't include is what's your power bill going to be? You know, what's your cell phone cost? You know, do I go out to eat a lot? How much do I pay for gas? My insurance on my car. So you might even need, you know, if you rent, you might want renter's insurance. I've actually lived somewhere where there was a fire in the building, and I was glad I had that. So those are some things to think about. So if you kind of judging, well, go to what the professor was talking about, is say, here's estimated how much I'll make a month. Here's what my student loan is, so start with that. Here's what my housing cost is going to be because I'm going to have to live there, and if I have a car payment. And let that kind of dictate your other things that you do in your life. Don't start with the wants, start with the needs. And I feel like my father always said this.
It's coming from a good place for sure. If I missed anyone yet, don't be shy, folks. I'll let you run the show a little bit if you'd like. Don't want to leave any area.
So I got a question for the group. Let's take a look at it as though it's a big pendulum, okay? On one end, you've got zero debt, okay? And you could listen, and we could, you know, you might listen to us talk all day about the dangers of debt, and you might leave here thinking, okay, I can make this easy. I'm just never going to borrow money for anything. Only pay cash. And we all know that, I mean, besides Doctor here, most of us don't have cash to pay for it.
You made a good distinction about the medical part earlier.
And then on the other end, I actually had a professor in my MBA program. He's my economics professor, and I was telling this story beforehand. And he jokingly, but he was serious when he said this, he said his goal in life was to die with every single bit of debt that he could possibly find or have maxed out. You know, every time he goes through the line at Best Buy, if they're going to offer him a credit card, he's going to say yes and max it out. And this is kind of, you know, he was using that as an analogy for economics.
On paper, that works well. You know.
So we have these two opposite ends. Where in the middle should we be? What amount of debt is acceptable? I know somebody in there's got to be asking that. So, you know, anyone, tell me, what, you know, give me an idea of something that you should or should not finance. Okay.
Such questions is always a misconfusion about them. Somebody had told me that, you know, if you pay your credit card right off, like, you know, every month pay it off, always, that would be good credit. You a little bit on there and then accumulate up, you know, like some kind of interest, even it's like $50 or whatever. So you can really put it up and then, you know, play the game and maybe, you know, get your score up. So I'm just trying to get the direction on that.
I can tell you, not to get real into the weeds, but I know that statistically for a lender, it's more predictable that someone's going to not pay you or pay you depending on how much they owe on their credit card divided by their credit limit. So I wouldn't say that that's a positive. I mean, I look at it just again, like what I talked about here. How much you owe, it doesn't mean the more you owe, the better your score is, it's the less you owe. So I don't really buy that one because I just kind of look at it as you're spending it, you're paying interest to somebody to build your credit. So I wouldn't.
I think the question was, is it good to just pay off your credit card in balance in full every month versus leaving a little bit on there so you've got credit?
I wouldn't make a decision on whether I'm going to pay it all off and now I'm going to be tight that month and all specifically to build your credit, because I really don't see that it does. That's going to not have that big of an impact. I'm more about how much you owe, and are you comfortable as far as putting money aside so if something occurs, like if something happens with your car and you have to pay your car deductible, if all of a sudden you have to go to the doctor and get some tests and you have a high deductible insurance and now you all of a sudden get hit with a $500 bill, I'd be more concerned with that because I don't think like that tactic is going to really change a lot. It's really open the debts that you need, make your payments on time, and build a cash nest egg. I mean, that's my sum up.
What he's saying, let's use this as an example. Let's say you have a credit card that you can, with the limit of $1,000, okay? You're in your scenario, what if you put $100 on it every month and paid it off at the end of the month? Versus what if you put $200 on it and then paid off $100, okay? I don't think there's much difference in that. The important thing is to make the payment on time and then worry more about, if you get over to like 50% of, what you owe versus what's available. So using that same $1,000 credit card, if now all of a sudden you owe $700 on that $1,000 credit card, but you owe $700, you can only borrow $300, that's going to look worse for your credit than if you owe $200. Now, obviously, if you owe $0, that's even better. So I don't think, it's certainly not going to hurt you by putting stuff on your credit card and then paying it off in full every month. There's a lot of people that do that just to get the point.
You wouldn't gain anything by running balance just to run balance. I do think one, maybe you'll be familiar, I don't know, one kind of game, if you will, I've heard before is that you don't want to let a credit card, especially we're talking like the major card, the Panera MasterCard that I have per se, don't let it go dormant for a year, because you might want to make a charge or two a year and pay it off, but you don't want to maybe let the account go completely quiet or dormant, or the account might get canceled in full. I don't know if that's true or how long it would take for that to actually happen, but since it's good for you to have available credit that you're responsible paying on available to you, that might be one thing to consider. That's sort of the spirit of that, is to kind of the gamesmanship around.
Whenever I was younger than 30, my problem wasn't having a bad bill on there. It was more or less, this money's going to be spent, what do I spend it on? So, if you can afford to do that every month, that's good for you. And I don't certainly think it will hurt your credit.
I can't forget where we got credit cards at 18, on our own in college, usually oftentimes outside of football games and that sort of thing, with a t-shirt and that sort of thing. And that's been sort of eschewed over the years.
So one of the things I was kind of going with earlier is you got to kind of think about what are you spending that credit, that money that you don't have, that money that you're going to pay tomorrow, okay? Because that's what basically credit is. We're going to give you a lump sum now and you're going to pay it back in chunks over time. What kind of things should you put on credit? What kind of things should you not put on credit? And this is credit card all the way up to a mortgage on your house. Any thoughts? What should you use credit for, or what should you not?
Something that has significant resale value.
Okay, good start. Let me give you a good example. What about shots of tequila on Friday night at the bar for all your friends? What about a trip to Mexico? One of honestly, the easy one would be a new car. So the point is, you kind of were going to the right place, but anything that where, you know, if I finance this bottle of water, let's say it's a $50 bottle, it's one of those ionized in a glass bottle, it came from a Parisian well in the middle of the Andes Mountains or something. $50 bottle of water. Let's say I put that on a credit card and make a minimum payment of $1 or something every month. It could take me 10 years to pay this off. The second I drink this water and it's done, that money can never be spent again. I have consumed that money. So if you don't want to consume debt, you know, if you don't have the cash to pay for something you're consuming, and the reason I said a trip to Mexico, think about it, I mean, the day you step off that plane back in the United States, you've spent that entire amount of money. You will never get that trip to Mexico back. You cannot resell your memories on your trip to Mexico. A car, let's finance a car for 5 years. Well, basically, when you wake up today, you drive that car to work or school, you know, you've got some utility out of it, you've got some use out of it. Well, 3 years from now, you're going to wake up and drive that same car to work or school. You're still getting value out of it. So you're paying on that debt while you're still getting value today on something that you're paying on today. The worst thing you can do is 3 years from now be paying on something you consumed 3 years ago. Whether it be, you know, a shot of tequila, a trip to Mexico, or, you know, a meal at Burger King. You know, the worst thing you can do is, and especially right after you get out of college, you're not, you know, typically as we speak, as you progress in life and get older, you start making more money. So you're not going to be making the most money that you're going to make in your life the first few years out of college. The last thing you want to be doing is spending those 5 years not only scrounging to get by today, but also throwing a big chunk of that money on something you spent yesterday. So my rule of thumb is if you can continue to get value out of whatever it is, then it's okay to finance it. Another one is, you know, what's the average life of a car? Let's say today it's really long at 10 years, okay? So we know after 10 years, the car's not going to be worth anything. Well, why would you want to finance that thing for 15 years? You know, on a car is a not so good example, but we've run into situations with RVs. An RV only has a useful life of, say, 10 to 12 years. After that, it's just, you know, parts. So why would you want to finance your RV for 30 years? Because you're still paying on this thing long after it even has a useful life. So think about what you're financing, how long you can continue to use it for, and finance it within that period. A bottle of water is only useful for 30 minutes, so you know you might as well pay cash, because I don't think there's a credit union in the world that would finance it for 30 minutes. So that's kind of my rule of thumb.
Borrowing for liquidity versus for lifestyle.
Right.
I think another thing to remember along the same lines is you don't want to be credit card poor, what I say, or house poor or car poor. You want to borrow within your means. I mean, when you make a car purchase, sometimes that's an emotional thing. You're got your job, you now want a nice car, but you don't want to be spending all of your money paying for that car, or the same with your home, or that credit card. You want to be able to have cash that you can have entertainment or do other things with. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where every bit of your money is going to pay down your debt. And I know when you first get out of school, sometimes that's all you're doing, and you're just kind of surviving. You're working weekends, waitressing, and you're working a full-time job during the week. But as you pay down the debt and are responsible for maintaining regular and on-time payments, you're going to see your credit go up, and you're going to have availability to other credit cards that may pay you back. And that's where you want to be. You want to make what you charge pay you back with those credit cards that give you points for money back.
Yeah, in a perfect world, sorry, Dave, I'll let you have it. In a perfect world, you would love to say, I'm going to pay everything on this credit card, get these points and these dollars, and then when I get my check at the end of the month, pay everything on. There's a lot of people that strive to do that, but there's very few people that actually can do that. And, I'd love to, but every now and then, it just stuff stretches a little bit far, and it takes a little bit to pay that off. But then understand, anything you're spending today that you don't have, you're going to pay for it tomorrow. And you're going to have more tomorrow than you pay for today and tomorrow.
The trap is the ease of the credit card, and it's kind of wooing you into purchases you would not otherwise make, and you had to peel the bills out. I've heard the psychology behind, say, some interest in psychology and why people make decisions and make it in other words too. The psychology behind the lending can be really interesting. And maybe, I don't know what percentage of people can handle those sort of things responsibly and would not make one additional purchase per month because of a credit card versus who can fall down the hole because of that sort of thing. I don't have a feel for talking 80-20. Is it good or is it bad or what? Yeah, Dave, please.
Well, I was just going to suggest to everybody, and one of the things I learned early on was, you think about debt and paying down debt. One of the other things you go, well, until I pay down my debt, I really don't want to put any money away. I'll put it away over here later, because you're thinking of that as an investment. My suggestion to you is to think of that as a debt as well. My father always told me, pay yourself first. You set a dollar amount that you would save every month, whether it's small, large, it might only be $25 a paycheck. It doesn't matter, it's 25 more than you had. And you actually can act like you're a creditor. You're paying yourself. That you have to pay that every month. It's not a choice. The other smart thing that I would really suggest to you, and you can think of it as a debt as well, is if you're an employer and they offer a 401k and they match the 401k at all, that's one of the smartest things you can do is to start investing in your 401k early on. I'm just telling you from experience, that will be huge for you. So don't get into a mindset, please, that you can only pay these debts right now and then later you'll do it. Later never comes, let me just tell you that. Either you have to move, you might lose a job, you might get married, you're dating somebody, whatever, you might have children. I mean, all these lifestyle changes happen over time, and there's always something you have to pay for. And, a lot of times you got to make decisions of when things happen, and sometimes it's not a choice of I want to do it, it's I have to do it. And you want to be able to feel comfortable and enjoy your life and be able to, have money set aside, also with debt. I mean, they kind of complement each other. It's just, again, get away from the feeling part of, I want this, I need this, as far as do the things that are smart for you 30 years from now.
I think that's an excellent thought about retirement planning. A lot of our folks are going to be starting a brand new financial part of their lives where they're going to be dealing with, we talked about the repayment part of the student lending and such, but they're also going to be looking to invest for the first time ever, and the habit of putting those 401ks and things like that is important. And I guess also, I think I would encourage you all to definitely take David's advice on the matching part. Even a 25% match beats a 20% interest rate on some dollars spent. But beyond that, do you have any, maybe John or chime in a little bit more about the encouragement on the investing side of it, especially as there are so many different things, kind of say low interest rates right now, all-time high market-ish, but still you have to start somewhere. And
so I usually, one of the presentations I gave here before, I had a slide for this, which was really interesting. So two scenarios. One, person A, both individuals start working at 22, so work from 22 to 65 and then retire. Person A says, you know what, I can't afford at 22 to start contributing to my 401k yet. I'm going to wait until I can start, I can swing that. So that person waits 10 years, starts at the age of 32 to the time they're 65, putting into their 401k. If I remember right, it was $1,000 a month based on my calculation. $1,000 a month for $500 a paycheck, about $12,000 a year over those from age 32 to 65. It compounded and grew to roughly about call it 300, 400,000. Okay, the person B started at day one on age 22, saved the same $1,000 a month for 10 years, from 22 to 32, and then didn't put another dollar in there and let that amount grow from 32 to 65. And the person that started with the first 10 years of saving ended up ahead by about $100,000.
I do a version of that.
You're better off to save for the first 10 years and let it grow than it is to wait 10 years and save for the next, what was that, 33 years?
The early time is the most important of all. And that's without even talking about the psychology of getting into the habit. That's just,
So if you just save the whole time, I want to say the number was close to, $700,000-800,000.
And then one thing that he mentioned about the psychology of it is if it's taken out of your gross pay before you get your take-home check, net, you don't even recognize it. You don't even know it's happening. It's just automatically going in there and it's making money for you right off the get-go. So you don't know you've lost it, or you don't know you have it to spend.
It also lowers your adjusted gross income, and your taxes are based off of that as well. So we just think about it. If you got up to, say, you're at one of, as it progresses in the brackets, and that portion of your income, say at 20%, and even if the money never even goes up at all, you're kind of net up. You're up 20% because you didn't have to pay tax on it. I was just curious, how many people have a credit card in here? So kind of do it again. So we're kind of 50-50. And so those of you who don't have a credit card, just curious, have you applied for one? Are you waiting? Do you have questions about that? What are your options?
The best question I can think of, what would be the perfect APR rate? Because I know that research tells me
0.
that would be the perfect one, but no, seriously. There's one of them myself, like 27%.
Oh gosh, I mean, I would, really, it depends if you're going to pay it every month, it's irrelevant. If you're going to pay it down every month. I mean, honestly, if you're only going to keep $100, $200 on it, the difference between 5% sometimes it's a small amount of interest. So I think it gets down to, is it with your financial institution?
Well, let's think about this. On the flip side of that, how's the rate on that credit card set? Okay, so you want to get the best rate, and he wasn't joking. I mean, kind of tongue in cheek, but obviously 0% is the best rate you can get. Okay, but how's that rate set? It's not just one, it's set by the market. Okay, I mean, interest rates starting point is usually set by the market. Any adjustment from there, particularly up, the market says it should be 9%, but we can offer you 10.5%. Why are those adjustments made? Your credit score. So to say you should go in and be able to get a 4% credit card right now, well, if you had the highest possible credit score whatsoever, you were the best credit, 850, I don't know if you can find a 4% credit card right now because the market is just not there. So I would figure out, obviously do your research, look around. You're going to start seeing everybody's kind of in a similar 7 to 8%, or really not even there. It's more like 8 to 10% to start with, okay? And then again, anything higher, and you'll say, you can get a credit card as low as 9.5%, right? Well, that's for your A+, extremely high, people that probably don't even need a credit card to begin with. So that's your starting point. That's kind of set by the market. Anything else added on will be, we're going to add 1% on because you're, C credit or whatever. So that gets back to start early, start often. The best thing you can do probably in your shoes right now is if you have rent, if you have electricity bills, if you have a cell phone bill, just pay it all on time. Don't even be one day late. That's going to help. That's going to start building that credit so that when you want a credit card, you're going to get the lowest possible rate they can give you versus, then it becomes a, what is the market versus sometimes, you go in there with a 615 credit score and you start looking at 5 different credit cards when you may only be approved for 1 or 2 of them. So then your options are a lot less on, you got to take this one at 12% or you got to take this one at 13%. So that's a good example of why starting with the credit and getting that lined up first and early and often will help you get lower rates on things in the future.
Yeah, like what John said, A+, just so you know, it's A+. Really, it depends on the financial institution, but I'd say if your credit score gets over like 720, 740 in that range, that falls into that bucket. So when you're doing a comparison and you go onto one of these websites that compares different credit cards and stacks them up by rates and stuff, if you really want to squint or enlarge your screen quite a bit, you see a disclosure at the bottom, and it'll basically, in that small print, will tell you this rate is based on these estimates, and it'll probably have a credit score or something in here. So if you start with knowing, if I know my credit score is really high, then it's easier to shop for. If it's lower, that's going to be more difficult because you're not going to be able to compare them as well. And the reason I asked about the credit cards and like if you don't have one, I was curious if people have tried to get a credit card and they haven't been able to get approved, and that's why they don't have it. Is that anybody? I mean, not to set you up, but is it because you don't have any credit? Maybe. Has anyone that doesn't have it tried to get one and they've needed a cosigner because they didn't have credit? No?
And sometimes what he's talking about is no credit versus,
Yeah.
I've got a credit and it's really bad, but sometimes they look at you and they say, we've got nothing to make a judgment one way or the other.
It's an odd catch-22 because then who goes first?
Right.
And especially if you don't have a cosigner type available for that kind of thing.
Well, that's why I was setting this up first.
Jumping.
Yeah, we actually have a secured credit card. So you can have a deposit account and you can use that as collateral and you can start to build your credit with a secured credit card. And then after time, that you paid on it, then you can still go and apply for an unsecured and convert it later on. So that is an option for you as far as if you have no credit at all and you just start from scratch and you can't get a cosigner.
It will be easy to walk away from this whole discussion and go, man, this is easy. Finance is easy. I'm just not going to go get a credit card. That's not what we're saying, and because there are some needs and there are, everybody needs a credit card with some availability on it just for emergency situations. But so please don't leave here going, yeah, this is so easy. I'm just not going to borrow anything, because borrowing is a responsibility, not a right, and so we just have to exercise that responsibility. So or be responsible with that responsibility. So please don't leave here going, I'm going to avoid that altogether. We're trying to teach you how to go about it the correct way.
And to build some credit, because as Laura mentioned earlier with the career example, nowadays you'll have your credit pulled for things that you wouldn't even begin to think about. The John thing is almost spooky, I guess, but in the finance area it makes sense, at least in that sort of career.
And they pull credit for apartment complexes, if you're moving out of state into a new community or renting, they pull your credit. They pull your credit when you get car insurance. That's how you get the insurance that you get. So the better credit score you have, the better insurance you might have. Just everything is driven by those numbers. And back to not having a credit card, like John said, it's important to establish that. We're not saying not to have it, because I think you need it. You need it to travel. To me, I would rather use my credit card when I'm going away than my debit card because I'm so afraid of fraud. I don't want my checking account to get drained. I'd rather put it on my credit card. And I know I just went through this with my youngest son is establishing credit. And sometimes you have to get a card that you actually pay an annual fee for because you don't have any credit established. And another way is Credit Karma. I'm not really promoting them, but I'm just saying they have a program where you can see what your credit score is. They also monitor it. If anyone applies for a new card that you didn't know about, they notify you. They also give you offers depending on your credit score. So that's another way to kind of get established. As you continue to pay on or before your due date, as you don't go over your limit, that's going to boost your credit. Also, if you keep under 30% of your availability to credit, if you keep it under 30%, your credit's going to go up.
And I used 50% earlier, that was wrong, I just kind of pulled that out. That's
So-
why we're all the way today.
So if you have a $5,000 credit limit, $1,500 is really what your balance should be.
Right.
Your credit going up.
So really getting punched into the score when you get above that
Yes,
30%.
yes, you really get a big boost.
I think, I might be right, I think that annualcreditreport.com might be the
Yeah,
government one to check your.
It's free.
Mhm.
So that's a great way. I give that to a lot of our members that don't know where they're at.
Yeah, I encourage you to check your credit reports with that site, maybe even stagger them, do one of the three every 4 months. I put it in my calendar, but I'd say I'm boring.
If you deny credit, you can get a free credit report from each one of the credit reporting agencies free to use. If you've ever denied, you can go to all 3 of those reporting agencies and get your credit report.
Did you have
Yes,
a question?
ma'am, please.
Yes, is 401k a good option for H-1B visa holders? Now they're going to withdraw this money maybe in 1, 2, 3 years?
That's a really good question.
Don't have-
I had not thought about the international implication there at all. I'm so pre-programmed in the household version.
The thing with the 401k is that you're going to be penalized interest-wise, right? Right up front.
No, well,
She said 401k.
no. Yeah, no,
Yes.
401k is tax deferred until you.
But I mean, she takes the money out earlier.
If you withdraw the money, like let's say in 1 year,
Yeah.
I got my first paycheck, it has a 50% match, and I'm going to have to withdraw this money.
To leave the country with it?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, because when you have a 401k, let's say you stay within the country, you just move from one employer to the next.
Then it can kind of like roll over.
Yes.
You roll it over into an IRA. I would imagine, even if you were to take it and move out of the country, you could probably roll it
It
over.
feels
into
like
an
there should be a
IRA.
way to repatriate that or something, but I don't know that. That's a very good question.
If you do take it out, you will be penalized.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
have to pay a lot of taxes, so rolling it over is the best way.
Yes.
So we don't know if it's possible to roll over to another.
But I can figure that out with you. So don't let me get away.
Okay,
And we'll
thank you.
figure it
You
out.
have options, yes, that is your money, you can take it with you. How the government of the U.S. treats it, I mean, obviously you can keep it here in the U.S., roll it over into an IRA and fine, but if you wanted to take it back with you to whatever country you were going, or to another country.
I mean, I don't know the best option.
Yeah.
Like if I should keep it, if I should take home.
You would definitely want to talk to
So,
the person who's in charge of that.
I'm gonna check in.
Stu.
I'm a junkie HR person.
I'm good.
I'm an accountant. One thing with your 401k plan, a couple things to keep in mind first, especially if it's a 1 year kind of situation, you gotta look at the vesting. So, like at our credit union, you've got to be with us for 3 years to get 100% of the match dollars. And obviously the whole idea behind the match is to encourage you to stay and keep employed with the credit union. So if you leave early, you won't get the match, or you only get a percentage of the match. So that's one of the first things you got to know is, well, what is the vesting schedule? So what percentage do I get if I leave in year 1 or year 2 or year 3? Then there is a penalty. I think it's a 10% penalty plus Plus you got to pay taxes if you take the money out early, if you can't roll it over. The international one, I'm not exactly sure. But if you get in our case, we have a 100% match, so dollar for dollar match. Even if you've got to pay a 10% penalty, you're ahead of the game if you're vested in that match. So those are some of the things to keep in mind, even if you know you're only going to be there short term. I still think 401k, if there's a good matching program and a reasonably short vesting schedule, do it anyway, even though you know you're going to leave at some point in time. But those are the key things to keep in mind: is the vesting schedule first and foremost. Is will I get it if I leave early? And then secondly, if it's only a 25% match, well then there's not a huge incentive.
So it should be like at least 80%, something like that? Like what percentage?
So there's too many variables with your situation to just go, here's the rule of thumb, you should do this or that. But I can tell you as kind of the, throw my finger up in the air and see which way the wind direction is going, I would say most likely you're going to be better off by investing in your 401k than if you didn't. But I would speak to, in your particular unique situation, I would speak to someone that has a better understanding of it than we do.
But probably fair. 25% match or less, it's kind of 50% for sure. I would do it hands down. Again, if there's a reasonably short vesting schedule on it.
But if that's not the option for you, doesn't mean you shouldn't have some kind of retirement savings going on. The earlier you can start, the better. So 401k is just another retirement savings vehicle. So.
And another benefit from the 401k that I sometimes suggest to some of our members that might be in a really hardship situation is taking a hardship disbursement from their 401k to help them get out of their hardship. Maybe they're 5 months behind on their mortgage. That's hard to come up with that amount of money in a short amount of time. So the benefit of a 401k is you can do a hardship disbursement and you're not penalized. You pay it back. I think there's several different reasons you can get a hardship disbursement. Medical, mortgage, and I think schooling.
Job loss.
Job loss, but it's a great tool. I mean, for retirement and through life, a hardship does come up.
Give me a good example of a lot of some people that you need to speak with about this that could really answer, say for like a professor, someone in the professional, they have to be licensed to even talk to you about this stuff. So,
For free.
Yeah. I can tell you what I can read on Google, but other than that, you're probably as good as I can.
But it's doable. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
How much of my time? I feel like I'm right at 12.
We're actually at the right amount of time.
Okay.
If you had anything you wanted to wrap up as a table, that's great. And then afterwards, you'll have time. We're going to have them at different tables in different corners so that you can one-on-one ask a personal question if you might have it, so that you didn't have to ask the question in front of everybody. So if you want to wrap it up.
Actually, why don't we do that? Why don't we have, especially now that you've had a chance to marinate in the discussion here for over an hour, why don't you just share maybe one last thing that crossed your mind that you didn't get a chance to take away, or just your biggest summary points and keys, and take a moment or so.
I'll just say one other thing again, just to reiterate, this is not a, whoa, stay away, run and hide, go put your money under a mattress type situation. This is very adult, very, helpful information, and we're just trying to, say, use it this way, not this way. Because I use myself as an example. I thought using my credit card was a great idea to pay for all those shots of tequila at the bar. And I was still paying for those shots of tequila at the bar 5 years later. And so a lot of what I bring is just personal missteps that I made whenever I was in my early 20s. So nothing to be ashamed of. Let's just see what
I think one of the things that I thought about when I saw the list of questions was paying down debt was one of the questions that we didn't really get to address. And how do you pay down debt? There's a couple people out there with some really good ideas, and David Ramsey, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, and Larry Burkett. A lot of them approach it, the item with the largest amount of interest or the highest interest rate, you pay it down first, and then take that $50 that you paid on that debt, add it to the next one, and increase that payment, pay that one down. Some of them say pay down debt that has a smaller balance because you feel rewarded once that's paid off. Take that amount that you paid on that smaller balance, put it on the next loan that you're paying off, increase that and pay that off, and then go down and the next, and pay them all off. But those are a couple people that you might want to listen to, and they've got some great ideas about paying down debt and not being tied to all that debt. It's important to have credit. It's important to watch your credit with today, all the scams and things that are out there. It's important to know where you are. It's important to manage the money you make. And that's what I thought.
That's one more good reason to check those credit reports, is to look for I had one of them myself a couple of years ago to identify hackery, if you will, check those reports. David?
Yeah, I did read that, when you get out and with the student loans, you will start getting people trying to scam you. And you're going to start getting stuff in the mail. I mean, it's no different than when I lived here, I registered my car, and then I start getting this stuff scaring me to death, like my warranty's going to run on. So people are going to find you somehow through all this, the world we live in with all the data breaches. So if you ever have a question and you get something in the mail, if it's something from a servicer other than the company that's got your student loan, I would be very leery of it, and there's a lot of things that people offer that you can do for free yourself. I mean, here's an example. There's companies that will come out and say, you can pay bi-weekly on your mortgage and get it paid off quicker, and we'll only charge this fee, and we'll do it. You can do that yourselves for free. So watch the scammers, because you'll start to see all that.
Debt consolidation companies are bad, and if you have a student loan and it's government, keep it with the government. Don't refinance it into a private student loan.
But the only other thing I'd throw at you, it's just kind of like a scary thing about your debts, and I'm going to have this much money, and what am I going to do? I think a good guide for you is to set goals for yourself through your life, and I mean maybe just goals as far as I'm going to try to pay this down to X by this date, or I'm going to try to save this much money in my savings account. I'm going to save this much a month. Maybe there's something you do want to buy. Because let's face it, everybody, you work real hard in school, and then you're going to get a job, and you don't want everything just to be about, you want to have a little pleasure in all this. So set aside some money, so maybe I'm going to go out to eat, or I'm going to go on a date, or do something, and I'm going to spend this much money. But I think if you just set goals, it might make all the decisions a lot easier for you, and you maybe follow through.
Especially for my students and even alumni, I tell the same to my students to take my personal finance course, that don't lose my email, because I'm not going to ever try to sell you anything, I promise. So I had a question about a boat this weekend from a student from 6 years ago. So say, if your eyes glass over, hopefully I'll still be here. Just say it's students for me, and I'll try to do it. I'm easy to find. And I'm kind of reverse paid by the word, so I'll just talk your ear off about whatever situation, just because I think it's